Hi everyone, so Flora here. I'm coming to you from the south of Portugal in Santa Clara, and I've got Jack here with me today. He clearly wants to go on a walk. I'll have to do that. I actually wanted to just take some time and update you on our kelp restoration project, which some of you might have been following. Actually, I gave you an update in September when we had our last deployment. Yeah, this was actually really cool. The kelp deployed in September was kelp that had been seeded in 2023, so last year, and was actually growing in the nurseries for a really long time. So much longer than any kelp we had deployed until that point. Yeah, that's actually quite interesting because it was a more developed batch of kelp, and we also deployed it the same place we had deployed before, so in the Gia Reef, but instead of deploying on the north side, we deployed on the south side because it actually just seemed to provide better seafloor conditions than the northern side. This is what happened in September. You can also check out previous log where I go a bit more into detail on this. But today I wanted to talk a bit about our most recent deployment, and that actually just happened a couple of weeks ago. And yeah, this is a really exciting one because for this deployment, the kelp that was used was seeded during the summer. Yeah, I also made a feed post about this, so if you remember, you can go check it out. But the kelp that we used for this deployment was seeded in two different ways. The gist of it is that some of the kelp we just seeded on the regular pebbles, so the stones we've been using so far on this project, the green gravel stones. And then some of the kelp we actually seeded in a new way, a new technique that was developed this year. We call this the sea socks technique, and it basically consists of putting the pebbles inside of a biodegradable mesh and kind of creating these lumps of pebbles, and then seeding the kelp onto those pebbles inside of the biodegradable mesh. This is actually really cool because a recent paper that was published, I think in spring of this year, actually said that one of the ways that we might actually get this green gravel technique to work in places where ocean conditions are harsher, where there's more wave exposure and yeah, there's just more movement in the water, using bigger stones might actually be the way to go because they're heavier and they might just not get so moved around as much by the movement of the ocean. So these sea socks will actually work in a very similar way. This is all really cool, but the most exciting part about this recent deployment, to me at least, is actually where we deployed, because we'd been talking to SeaForester for a while about how we were going to do this next deployment. The kelp was seeded much later in the year than we had planned, so usually we would have seeded in the spring, which then gives the kelp enough time to grow and develop before autumn comes around, so September to deploy. But because we seeded in summer, yeah, this batch was going to be deployed in the winter. With winter approaching and it just being a windier time, there being, more waves and just rougher conditions generally speaking, we thought about deploying at a deeper site than we have before, because kelp can grow up to, 50, 60 meters in depth, depending on how much light gets through and depending on a few things. But it's known to grow up to those depths, so we thought it might be interesting. Also because at that kind of depth, ocean conditions wouldn't be as harsh, and you wouldn't feel the wave exposure so much, so it might actually work better for deploying the kelp. And so SeaForester set out to find a deep site where we could deploy. They surveyed two potential sites. One is called Mar das Troncas and the other Cerro do Sudoeste. And this first site, Mar das Troncas, after surveying, it didn't seem like a very good place to deploy. It just had very big boulders all around. There were quite abrupt crevices and just was a very irregular area, and it didn't seem like a good fit. The second site, on the other hand, Cerro do Sudoeste, it actually surprised us quite a lot. It seemed to provide very good conditions for deploying kelp. This site, the Cerro do Sudoeste, is located at about 23 kilometers off the coast of Peniche and 15.5 kilometers southwest of Berlingas. Yeah, SeaForester were there with a ROV, a remotely operated vehicle, and also some divers. And yeah, what they found was quite incredible. So, first of all, the seabed at this location seemed to be made up almost entirely of rock, which is a very good thing. And it seemed to be a very flat and regular surface, which is, again, a very good thing. And there seemed to be no sandbanks at the site, which is a positive as well. These are already very good facts, but the most exciting and probably most important fact was that they also found kelp, scattered kelp individuals on the site. So that's very, very cool and a very good indicator, and basically just shows that it's a favorable site for deploying the kelp. The individuals they found were of Laminaria, and I'm sorry for my Latin, Laminaria ocholeuca, which is a native kelp. The individuals they found seemed to be scattered with a spacing of between 15 and 20 meters between individuals, which it might be that these individuals are remnants of a previous much denser and healthier population of kelp, which has started to disappear. That's pretty cool. And one other thing that made the site favorable was when divers actually confirmed that sea conditions down there, the currents, the movements of the waves were not felt down there. So even it being a very windy day on the sea surface, you didn't feel anything down on the site. So this just made the site ideal for deploying kelp. So basically the next day, SeaForester went back. They actually went on the boat of some local fishermen, which were kind enough to lend them the boat. For the deployment itself, things were business as usual. So the kelp was transported to the port in the temperature-controlled van, loaded onto the boat, and then taken out to the deployment site. One thing that was done slightly differently than the times before was that instead of having the boat move and deployed the kelp in that way, the boat was actually anchored and the kelp was deployed in an area of about 100 square meters. So basically having it in a more compact area, and the idea is that later on when we go back to survey the site, this will make it easier as it's in a deeper area, so it might be harder to find again. Although we have the coordinates, so it should not be an issue, but you never know. Yeah, now the kelp has been deployed. SeaForester's happy, we're excited to see how this batch does and if it survives the winter or not. We hope it does. We already had some very promising results last year, and kelp survived for quite a long time, grew quite a lot in size, and we just hope that by deploying in this deeper site, it will allow for the kelp to grow even more and actually attach to the rocky reef, as this seemed to be the problem in the previous year. Yeah, now we can't do anything. The kelp's out in the open ocean and has to fight for its own survival, so to say, and we'll keep you updated. But basically now for the next 2-3 months nothing will be happening, and that's when SeaForester will go back to the site and conduct a survey and report back to us on what they find at the site. Hopefully it will be good news, but until then we wait. Yeah, thanks for sticking around this long. I hope you enjoyed the update, and yeah, I'll see you around. Cheers.